everyone. Welcome to Call the Doctor today. It's actually John Readey's session and he'll take over in a minute, but I wanted to talk about our upcoming HUG event and particularly one of the events talks that John is handling. So briefly, we will be having the HDF5 user group meeting at AZ in Hamburg this year, May 26th through 28th. You can still register to attend online. We welcome remote participation by Zoom. We tried our best to schedule events. There's like no good way to make it easy for both Europe and the US to attend, but we are planning on recording all the sessions and putting them on our YouTube channel. We do have several roundtable sessions that we want everyone to try to attend. These times that I'm going to list aren't really totally final. You know, things happen at sessions, so they may go earlier by up to 25 minutes. Just watch the timetable on the website. So briefly, I'll mention the other ones that we're doing that may be of general interest to the HDF5 community. Director of Engineering, Scott Breitenfeld, will be doing a State of the HDF5 session where he's kind of talking about what's going on, upcoming challenges, future directions for our work. And then after that session and after John's session, I'll tell you about, there'll be a HDF5 roundtable and it's open community discussion. Any topic is fine. Questions, concerns, you can ask, what are you guys doing with this? Why did you do that? So that will be the last hour of each day, starting at about 3:50 on Monday, 3:30 on Tuesday. But I wanted to kind of end up talking about John's roundtable session that he's giving. It's a HDF5 viewer roundtable. There are a number of tools that people can use to view and sometimes edit HDF5 files. And there hasn't really been a concise place to sort of compare and contrast these for the users. But in this session, kind of the developers or I don't know what else to call them, but the parents of these tools will talk about the history, features, intended uses, and future roadmap of the tools. And then we'll also have an open discussion of what future steps would best serve the community. Like, what are we missing? What works and what doesn't work? So all of these roundtable events, we really hope to get everyone from the community involved in. And that registration link is there at the bottom, indico.desi.de, ehug25. So hope to have everyone there. And if you have any questions for John, he can answer about the roundtable, or he can just go into the content he had planned today.
I'd like to mention that in addition to the viewer roundtable, I'm also presenting a talk on HSDS. And there's actually another talk about HSDS given by the Max 4 Institute from Sweden. And Quincy will be giving a talk on sharded HDF5, which I think will be very interesting as well.
Yeah, there are quite a few really interesting sessions planned for this year's event. And again, they'll all be recorded, so no one has to wake up at 2 in the morning in the Midwest. So.
Okay, so unfortunate the timing for the people in the States.
Yeah, we can't win. It's okay.
Anyway, if it's okay, I'll go on to my talk now. So let me start by saying that I've been using Mac for a long time. I think Macs are very popular with developers. But recently, I switched over to the dark side. Yes, I got a Windows laptop. And I have to say that I think, especially for people using Docker, it's a very convenient environment. And so I'll kind of show how this works as I go on. The one thing you'll need is to install a software for Windows 11 called WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. I'll put a link here in the chat. So what WSL does is provides a actual Linux that you can switch to from your Windows session. So your Windows apps are still running, but in the meantime, you also have what's basically an independent Linux system available to you. And in contrast for example, on the Mac, if you want to run Docker, you're running that in a virtual machine. And the contrast between WSL and the virtual machine is that WSL uses much less resources for your computer. Virtual machines like VirtualBox, virtual machines, typically kind of commit all the memory they'll have at startup. And so that's kind of locked out from the rest of your system. Whereas with WSL, the memory can come and go as applications start and stop and so on. So here, let me do this by sharing my desktop. If I can remember where to share things. Share. And I'll do the whole screen. Okay, do you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I won't bore you with the process of installing WSL here, but I've already installed it. So first of all, this is a Windows 11 Pro system. And here I have a command session on Windows. So I can tell because if I do dir, it gives me a list of stuff. So the one challenge, I think, with HSDS on Windows is that it was supported, but not full-heartedly, if you will. For example, in the HSDS distribution, we have a lot of bash scripts that don't run directly on Windows. And so that's a bit problematic, right? So the kernel code would run fine on Windows, but there are some things that these scripts, similar scripts that didn't run. Also, there are some little kind of obscure issues with Windows as an operating system. For example, the time resolution was less than on Linux and Mac. And as a result, some tasks like, for example, that would list attributes by creation time would fail on Windows just because of this timing granularity. So I'm pretty happy with WSL because it lets you run HSDS fairly easily on your Windows platform, and you have access to wherever bash scripts you need and so on. So let me show you how this goes. So here, I think I'm still my Windows persona, or not. Okay, so now I'm logged on to this Windows command shell. And if I say, who am I? It says I'm Azure D/John Readey, /John Readey. If I type WSL now, I switch into this Linux mode. So now if I do who am I set up a Linux account called John. So that's who I am now as a Linux person. If I do pwd, it says the path is /mnt/c/user/John Readey /repo/HSDS in this case. So this is basically the Windows file system showed under your Linux context. So you have both ways shareability of files. You can see your Windows files from Linux and vice versa. Now, for performance, it's better to have HSDS use the Linux file system. You can use the Windows file system, but there'll be a slight penalty for each file access. So let me see, do I actually have this set up? I do not. I will do source bash. And so I'm going to run HSDS using POSIX, and I set my root dir to be /home/john/my-buckets. So this is a directory in the Linux file system. And the setup for this would be exactly like the setup for HSDS under Linux with Docker. So if you go to HSDS repo, we have /docs/ I forgot the exact name. It was like, running Linux with Docker. So you just I have Docker set up. So you install Docker just like you would install Docker on Linux system. And I don't have any containers running. But if I do this -run all, oh, actually, let me do one more thing first. I'll create a new user for HSDS. So if I edit admin config password.txt, I have these 3 default users. I'll add another user. Oops. Called John, and also use the top secret password test. Okay. So now I'll do -run all.sh. So this example is one of those bash scripts that you can't run directly on Windows. But here I'm within the WSL environment, it's hunky-dory. So this starts up and I can see my containers. I can do things like Docker logs HSDS SN1. Okay. I can do curl HTTP localhost 5101. That's about. And I see this response. And notice the name is HSDS on WSL2. That's one of the override configurations I set up. If I do cat admin config override.yaml, I'm setting server name to be HSDS on WSL2, just so I can be sure when I'm connecting to something that this is the actual HSDS instance that I want. Okay, so now we have HSDS running on this Linux subsystem. What if I now switch back to Windows? Okay, so just to recall, now I'm back to being my Windows persona. And I have dir and backslashes for directory separators and all that good stuff. I can still use curl HTTP localhost 101 about, and I get the same response. So the ports that are exposed in Docker on WSL are available from your Windows environment. Okay, so this means that I can run H5PD or other applications and access HSDS using that URL and port. So if I say HSLS, let's run hsconfigure. So hsconfigure is an H5PD script to set up your configuration to access HSDS. So first it wants the server endpoint. So I'll do HTTP, a localhost 501, and username, we use John and test, and no API key. And it says testing connection okay, save changes. So this goes into a Windows file, /users / John Readey /somehow.hsconfig. And if I run commands now like hsinfo, it'll tell me that the server state's ready. The server name is HSDS and WSL2. Server version is 1.0.0. No counts 4, and it's been up for 3 minutes, so on. Okay. If I didn't set up a home folder for John, so let's do that now. So if I do hsls/home, I see I have a home folder for this test user 1, but I can't, as John, I can't create domains under that. So if I do hstouch/home test user 1 foo.h5, it'll fail with a forbidden error because the user John doesn't have write permissions to test one's home folder. So we can correct that by doing hstouch as the admin user. So -u for user, and the admin password is admin. And we want owner to be John, and we'll create the folder home John. And to be a folder, rather than an HDF5 file, you need to have a trailing slash. So we'll do that. And now if I do hsls/home, we see that there's /home/John. If I do hstouch/home/foo.h5, oops. Well, that didn't work so well. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Oops. List-v. It says user is John. Should have access.
John, did you want to touch home John foo.h5?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Thanks, sorry. Okay. Yes. Okay. So that was a simple mistake. So /home/John/foo.h5, and now I have this very awesome HDF5 domain file here. There's no contents. And now let's try, I've stashed some HDF5 files here. We can load that. So in my Windows system, I have this file dat3510.h5. And if I do hsload dat3510.h5 to /home/John, that will load up. So what's happened is that hsload has looked at the contents of this HDF5 file using H5Py on Windows. And then for each of the objects within that file, it's made an HTTP request to HSDS, which is running on this WSL subsystem, and all that content got replicated. So if I do hslist/home/John, you can see the content there. And I could run any kind of, let's say, H5PyD application to read and write this data, and it would work, just like you had the original HDF5 file. So all in all, I'm pretty happy going to Windows. I think it's a a nice environment because you get a Windows with all its apps, and then you get this kind of bonus Linux environment you can use as well. So that's all I had to present. Are any questions about this or any questions about HDF5 in general?
So I have a question.
Sure, Joe.
How do you expose the HSDS server to other machine? For example, your
Yes.
Mac.
That is an interesting point, actually, that if you want, so by default, with the WSL setup, that the IP address exposed by HSDS won't be accessible to the outside world. And if you've seen how I set my passwords, that may be a plus. But if you do want to expose it, there's a special configuration you need. Let me go here. I actually had the page, accessing network applications with WSL. So check this page out. I'll put it in the chat. If I can get to it. Let's see, where's my chat window? Sorry. Here, let me chat. Oh, here. Okay, so that's in the chat. So yeah, there's some special stuff you need to do to expose that. Does that help, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, so if there are no other questions, I guess we'll conclude. So just final reminder, don't forget about the EU Hug. If you can't be in Hamburg, please do your best to sign up to the Zoom sessions. I think it'll be great. And look forward to seeing everyone there.
All right. Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks, Larry.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.